Before we start, if you're into real stories from classified CIA operations, the black sites nobody talks about, the facilities that don't appear on any map, the secrets buried in the most remote places on Earth, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you want more stories from intelligence operations. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Now, what I'm about to share happened at a CIA facility in Alaska that officially doesn't exist, and it's the reason I can never go back there. Let's get into it. My name is David Carson, and in December 1987, I was assigned to what the CIA calls Special Operations Site 7, though that's not the name on any official document because officially it doesn't exist. The assignment came through encrypted channels. I was working at Langley, standard analytical work on Soviet military capabilities. Good at my job, decent clearances, nothing special. Then my supervisor called me in and told me I'd been selected for a 2-year posting to a remote facility in Alaska. How remote? I asked. 200 miles north of Fairbanks. Nearest town is 80 miles away. Population 300. The facility is accessible only by helicopter or snow vehicle during winter, which is 9 months out of the year. What kind of facility? Research station. Officially, it's a joint CIA Defense Department operation studying Soviet radar installations across the Bering Strait. That's the cover story if anyone asks. Your real assignment is classified at a higher level than your current clearance allows. You'll be briefed on site. And if I refuse? He looked at me with the kind of expression that made clear I wasn't really being asked. Then you'll be reassigned to a desk job in a basement office in D.C. where you'll spend the next 20 years processing paperwork. This is an opportunity, Carson, the kind that leads to advancement, if you succeed. I arrived in Alaska in January 1988. The helicopter ride from Fairbanks took 3 hours, flying over endless white landscape. Forests gave way to tundra. Tundra gave way to Arctic waste. No roads, no towns, no signs of human civilization. Just snow and ice as far as I could see. The facility appeared suddenly, a cluster of buildings barely visible against the white landscape. From the air, it looked like a standard weather station or research outpost. Half a dozen structures connected by enclosed walkways surrounded by a perimeter fence. But as we descended, I noticed the details that marked it as something else. Guard towers, though unmanned. Satellite dishes pointing in directions that didn't make sense for monitoring Soviet radar. And underground, visible as depressions in the snow, what looked like additional structures buried beneath the permafrost. We landed on a cleared pad. The cold hit me the moment I stepped out. -40 degrees, air so cold it hurt to breathe. I was escorted immediately inside by 2 men in Arctic gear who didn't introduce themselves. The facility was warmer inside, but barely. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, the institutional feel of a government installation. They led me down a corridor to an office where a man in his 50s sat behind a desk. "Carson," he said, "I'm Colonel Marcus Webb, Facility Commander. Welcome to Site 7. Before we go any further, you need to sign additional security documentation." He slid a folder across the desk. Non-disclosure agreements, security protocols, acknowledgement that everything I was about to learn was classified above top secret. I signed. "Good," Webb said. "Now, I can tell you what we actually do here. Have you heard of the DEW line? Distant Early Warning, chain of radar stations built in the 1950s to detect Soviet bombers coming over the Arctic. Correct, this facility was built in 1962 as part of that network. But the radar station was just the cover story. Our real purpose has always been studying what was found here in 1943. Found? I asked. Webb stood up. "Come with me. Some things you need to see to understand." He led me deeper into the facility, through security checkpoints that required biometric scans and access codes. We descended 3 levels underground, into sections that had been carved out of the permafrost itself. During World War II, Webb explained as we walked, the military was building cold-weather training facilities across Alaska. In 1943, a construction crew was excavating near here when they broke through into a void space in the permafrost. Natural cave system, formed by ancient geological processes. Should have been empty. But it wasn't, I said. No, there was something in there. Frozen solid, had been for thousands of years. Maybe tens of thousands. The crew didn't know what they'd found, but they knew it was unusual enough to report. Military sent a team of scientists to investigate. Those scientists realized what they were looking at was unprecedented. We reached a final door. Heavy steel, like a bank vault. Webb typed in a code, pressed his hand against a scanner. The door unsealed with a hiss of pressure. Beyond it was a laboratory. Modern equipment, monitoring stations, and dominating the center of the room. A cylindrical chamber, maybe 20 feet tall and 10 feet in diameter, filled with some kind of clear liquid. And suspended in that liquid was something I couldn't immediately identify. It was large, maybe 12 feet long, and vaguely humanoid in shape. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso and head, but wrong in every detail. The proportions were off. The joints bent at angles that didn't match human anatomy. The skin, if you could call it skin, was gray-white and appeared almost translucent. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "We don't know," Webb said. "And after 45 years of study, we still don't know. It's biological, cellular structure, DNA like genetic material, but it's not from any species we've ever encountered. Carbon dating suggests it's at least 35,000 years old, maybe older." I moved closer to the chamber. The thing's eyes were closed, its expression peaceful, like it was sleeping. "Is it dead?" I asked. "We don't think so." "Frozen for millennia, yes, but dead. The cellular activity we can detect suggests it's in some kind of suspended animation, hibernation. And if it were to thaw completely, he didn't need to finish. I understood. It might wake up. Exactly. Which is why we keep it at exactly -38 degrees Celsius. Cold enough to maintain the suspension, warm enough that we can study it without risk of cellular damage from extreme freezing. Study it for what purpose? Webb gestured to a workstation where a woman in her 30s was examining data on multiple screens. Dr. Elena Volkov, our chief researcher. She can explain better than I can. Dr. Volkov was Russian. I could hear it in her accent despite her excellent English. She stood and offered her hand. "Mr. Carson, welcome. The Colonel has told you about our subject. Some, but not why the CIA is interested in a frozen... whatever it is. Because we are not the only ones who found one," she said. "The Soviets have a specimen as well, found in Siberia in 1956. They have been studying it at a facility near Vladivostok, and they have learned things that we have not." "How do you know this?" I asked. "Because until 6 months ago, I was working at that facility. I was the lead geneticist on the Soviet program. And when I realized what they were planning to do with what they'd learned, I defected." Webb's expression was grim. Dr. Volkov brought us intelligence that changed everything we thought we knew about these specimens. "Show him, Elena." She pulled up images on her computer. Microscopic views of cellular structures, genetic sequences, complex molecular diagrams. "The specimens are not random anomalies," she said. "They are designed, engineered, created by something with technology far beyond our current capabilities. And they are not individuals, they are nodes in a network. A network of what? I asked. We believe they are seeding organisms, placed on Earth thousands of years ago, frozen in permafrost in locations around the Arctic Circle, waiting. And when the conditions are right, when the planet warms sufficiently that the permafrost thaws naturally, they will awaken, all of them, simultaneously, and they will begin the process they were designed to accomplish. Which is? Dr. Volkov's expression was troubled. Terraforming, transforming Earth's environment to match whatever conditions their creators require. The specimens are not explorers or colonists. They are advanced machines. Biological machines designed to alter the planet's atmosphere, oceans, and ecosystems. I stared at her. You're saying these things are aliens? From another planet? Or another time? Or another dimension? We don't know where they came from, but yes, they are not from Earth. And if they activate, if the thawing triggers their programming, how long would it take? I asked. The Soviet calculations suggest 50 to 80 years, one human lifetime to transform Earth into something unrecognizable, something we couldn't survive on. Webb sat down heavily. That's why you're here, Carson. Your job isn't just to guard this facility. It's to help us figure out how to prevent this. Because climate change is accelerating. The Arctic is warming faster than anywhere else on Earth, and we estimate that within 30 to 50 years, the permafrost will thaw enough to wake these specimens naturally. How many are there? I asked. We've identified 17 locations where similar void spaces exist in Arctic permafrost. 17 potential specimens. The Soviets have found 8 on their side. We have 5 on ours. The rest are in contested or inaccessible areas. And the Soviets? What are they planning? Dr. Volkov's hands trembled slightly. They want to wake their specimen intentionally, study it in an active state. Learn how it works so they can control the terraforming process. Use it as a weapon. That's insane, I said. That's why I defected, she replied. Because I realized my government was willing to risk the entire planet for military advantage. And I could not be part of that. I spent the next 6 months learning everything about the specimen and the research program. The facility operated with a staff of 23, scientists, military security, support personnel. All of them cleared at the highest levels, all of them aware that what we were doing could mean the difference between human survival and extinction. The work was tedious and terrifying in equal measure. We studied the specimen's biology, trying to understand how it functioned. We analyzed its cellular structure, mapped its genetic code, ran simulations of how it might operate when active. Dr. Volkov was brilliant but haunted. Late one night, working in the lab, she told me about the Soviet program. They have been experimenting for 15 years, she said, trying to accelerate the thawing process, trying to wake their specimen in controlled conditions. They lost an entire research team in 1972 when a partial thaw triggered unexpected responses. The specimen, it released something, a biochemical agent that transformed the researchers, changed them at a cellular level. Into what? I asked. Into extensions of the specimen itself. Their bodies restructured, their minds subsumed. They became part of it. Biological drones serving its purpose. Jesus Christ! And the Soviets want to wake it up anyway. They think they can control it. They think if they wake it slowly, if they study the transformation process, they can harness it, turn it into a weapon to use against the West. Have they succeeded? She was quiet for a long moment. I left before they completed their current experiment. But based on the timeline they were working on, they should be attempting another thaw sometime in the next few months. In July 1988, everything changed. I was on night shift, monitoring the containment systems, when Dr. Volkov burst into the control room. "Something is happening," she said. "The specimen's temperature is rising." "That's impossible. The containment system is working perfectly." "I know, but look at the readings." She was right. The specimen's core temperature had increased by 2 degrees in the past hour. Not from external heat, the containment system was maintaining the proper temperature. The specimen itself was generating heat. "It's responding to something," I said. "Some kind of external stimulus." We checked every system, every sensor. Nothing was malfunctioning. The specimen was simply warming up on its own, from the inside. And then the seismic monitors started registering vibrations. Low frequency, rhythmic, like a pulse, coming from underground, from the permafrost beneath the facility. "Something's waking up," Dr. Volkov whispered. "Not just our specimen. Something else. Something deeper." Colonel Webb joined us in the control room. "What's the status?" "The specimen is heating internally, and we're detecting seismic activity from the original discovery site, the cave where it was found." "Could there be more specimens down there?" Webb asked. "Additional entities we didn't detect? Or," Dr. Volkov said, "the specimens are connected. Communicating. If one wakes, they all wake. And if the Soviets successfully thawed their specimen." "It triggered a response in ours," I finished. "They're all linked. All part of the same network. And the network is activating." Webb grabbed a secure phone. "Get me Langley. Priority Alpha. We have a critical situation. Over the next 48 hours, the specimen's temperature continued to rise despite our best efforts to cool it. The seismic pulses grew stronger, more frequent. And then we started receiving reports from other sites. All 5 U.S. specimens were showing the same response. Temperature increases, seismic activity at discovery locations. The network was definitely activating. "The Soviets did it," Dr. Volkov said. "They woke their specimen. And now ours are waking in response." "Can we stop it?" Webb asked. "Not by cooling them. The heat is being generated internally. We'd have to destroy them. All of them. Before they fully activate. That would require coordinating with the Soviets," I said. "Convincing them to destroy their specimens, too. Good luck with that during the Cold War, but we tried. Through back channels, through diplomatic contacts, through intelligence networks. The U.S. government reached out to the Soviets, proposed a joint operation to destroy all specimens before they could wake. The Soviets refused. Claimed they had no specimens, no research program, no idea what we were talking about. Which meant we were on our own. 5 specimens in U.S. territory, all of them heating up, all of them on the verge of waking. And we had maybe weeks before they reached full activation. "We need to destroy them," Webb said during an emergency briefing. "All 5 sites simultaneously. Controlled demolitions or incendiary devices, whatever it takes." "That won't work," Dr. Volkov said. "You don't understand. The specimens are just nodes. Destroying them won't stop the process. There are others buried deeper that we haven't found. And there are the Soviet specimens. The network will continue activating with or without these 5. "Then what do we do?" I asked. She pulled up data on her computer, showed us genetic sequences, molecular structures. We reprogram them. The specimens are biological machines following ancient programming. But they're machines. And machines can be hacked. If we can understand their genetic code well enough, if we can introduce a counter signal, we can shut down the network," Webb finished. "Turn them off remotely. Theoretically." but we'd need the Soviet specimen's data to complete the analysis. Their genetic sequence has variations that ours don't. We need both to create a complete shutdown code. The Soviets won't share that data, I said. Dr. Volkov smiled grimly. No, but I know where it's kept. I know the facility layout, the security protocols, and I know how to access it. Colonel Webb looked at her. You're suggesting a covert operation into Soviet territory to steal research data from a classified facility. I'm suggesting that's our only option because in 3 months, maybe less, these specimens will fully activate. And when they do, the terraforming process begins. We have one chance to stop it. One chance to save our planet. Webb turned to me. Carson, you up for a field operation? I looked at the specimen in its containment chamber, at the thing that had been frozen for 35,000 years, waiting for conditions to be right, waiting to transform Earth into something alien. When do we leave? I asked. The plan was insane. Infiltrate a classified Soviet research facility during the height of Cold War tensions, steal genetic data from a specimen the Soviets officially claimed didn't exist, and escape before anyone noticed. But it was our only option. The specimens were waking up. We had weeks, maybe days, before full activation, and if we didn't have the complete genetic data to create a shutdown code, humanity was finished. Dr. Volkov spent 2 weeks preparing me. Maps of the Soviet facility, security protocols, guard schedules. She'd worked there for 12 years before defecting, knew every corridor, every checkpoint, every weak point in their security. The facility is outside Vladivostok, she explained, pointing to maps spread across the table. Remote location, similar to here. Officially, it's a weather research station studying Arctic climate. The real facility is underground, carved into bedrock beneath the permafrost. How many personnel? I asked. When I left, approximately 40, but that was 6 months ago. If they're actively working to wake their specimen, they may have brought in additional scientists and security. And the specimen itself? What kind of containment? Similar to ours. Cylindrical chamber, temperature controlled. But they've been experimenting with gradual warming. The last time I saw it, they'd raised its temperature to negative 20 degrees, trying to trigger partial activation without full awakening. Did it work? I asked. Her expression darkened. Partially. The specimen showed increased bioelectrical activity, muscular responses, but it also released biochemical signals that affected the research team. 3 scientists had to be quarantined. They showed signs of transformation, cellular restructuring. What happened to them? I don't know. I defected 2 weeks later, but I heard rumors they'd been moved to a special containment area, either for treatment or to study the transformation process, I finished. She nodded grimly. The Soviets see this as an opportunity, a way to understand and potentially control the terraforming mechanism. They don't fully grasp the danger. I left Alaska in September 1988 with a cover identity as a Canadian geological surveyor. Flew commercial to Tokyo, then to Khabarovsk, then finally to Vladivostok on a Soviet domestic flight. Every step of the journey monitored by CIA handlers, making sure I wasn't being tracked. The Soviet facility was 60 miles north of Vladivostok, accessible only by rough roads through taiga forest. I approached it as a lost surveyor who'd gotten separated from a research group, stumbling upon the facility looking for help. The guards were suspicious but ultimately bought the story. A Canadian surveyor lost in Siberia wasn't unusual. Foreigners did occasionally get permits to work in the region. They brought me inside to wait while they contacted their superiors to verify my story, which gave me exactly what I needed. access to the facility interior. While they were distracted making calls, checking databases for my fake credentials, I memorized the layout. Security checkpoints, guard positions, camera locations. Everything Dr. Volkov had described was accurate. After 2 hours, they determined my story checked out. The CIA had created a perfect backstory, complete with official permits and documented research activities. They gave me hot tea, directions to the nearest town, and escorted me back to the perimeter. I left, but I'd seen what I needed to see, and now I knew how to get back in. The infiltration happened 3 nights later. I approached the facility at 2 a.m. when guard shifts were changing and attention was at its lowest. Used climbing equipment to bypass the perimeter fence. Moved through blind spots in the camera coverage that Dr. Volkov had identified. Getting inside the main building required more finesse. Electronic locks, biometric scanners. But Dr. Volkov had given me her old access codes. Codes the Soviets likely hadn't changed yet, assuming she wouldn't risk coming back. They hadn't. The codes still worked. I descended into the underground facility. The layout matched Volkov's maps perfectly. 3 levels down, past laboratories and dormitories to the main research chamber. And there, in a chamber identical to the one in Alaska, was the Soviet specimen. It looked similar to ours, but larger, maybe 14 feet long, with subtle differences in anatomy. The same gray-white translucent skin, the same vaguely humanoid but fundamentally alien structure. But this one was awake. Not fully active, but definitely conscious. Its eyes were open, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. And it was moving. Slow, deliberate movements, testing the limits of its containment. A scientist was in the room, taking readings. I recognized him from the photos Volkov had shown me. Dr. Yuri Petrov, the lead researcher on the Soviet program. I stayed hidden in the shadows, watching. Petrov was recording data, speaking into a tape recorder in Russian. But even without understanding every word, I could hear the excitement in his voice. They'd succeeded in partial activation. The specimen was responding, was conscious, was communicating in some way they were just beginning to understand. Then Petrov left the room. I had minutes before someone else arrived. I moved quickly to the data terminals. Found the genetic sequencing files, the biochemical analysis, the molecular structure maps. Everything we needed to complete our understanding of the specimen's programming. I copied it all to a miniature storage device. Cutting-edge CIA tech could hold gigabytes of data in a device the size of a coin. And then the specimen looked at me. Not casually, not coincidentally. It turned its head, fixed its glowing eyes directly on where I stood, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that it was aware of me, not just aware, studying me, understanding me. A sound came from the containment chamber, not mechanical, not electronic, biological, like a voice but inhuman, speaking in frequencies I could barely hear, patterns that made my head hurt to process. And in that moment, I understood what Dr. Volkov had tried to explain. The specimens weren't just biological machines. They were conscious, intelligent, ancient and alien, but aware. And this one knew why I was here. Alarms started blaring, not because of me. The specimen had triggered them, deliberately, calling the guards, exposing my presence. I ran, back through corridors, past labs, toward the exit. Behind me, I heard shouts in Russian, boots pounding on concrete floors. Gunfire. I made it to the stairwell, climbed 3 levels while bullets ricocheted off walls around me. Reached the ground floor, sprinted for the exit I'd used to enter. More guards. I had no choice. engaged them with a weapon I'd brought for emergencies. 2 down before they could react, the 3rd wounded. But more were coming. I burst through the exit, ran for the perimeter fence, climbed it while searchlights swept the grounds, while more gunfire chattered behind me, got over the top, dropped to the other side, ran into the forest. They pursued. Dogs, trucks, helicopters with searchlights. I spent 6 hours evading capture, moving through terrain I barely knew, following escape routes Volkov had planned, but that looked very different in the dark. Finally reached the extraction point, a clearing where a CIA helicopter was waiting. Barely made it aboard before the Soviet search teams arrived. We lifted off under fire, bullets punching through the hull, but the pilot got us out. We made it across the border into friendly territory. I'd succeeded. I had the data, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the specimen had let me succeed, that it had exposed me deliberately, knowing the result would be chaos, confusion, an acceleration of the very crisis we were trying to prevent. I returned to Alaska with the Soviet data. Dr. Volkov and her team immediately began analysis, comparing it to our own specimen's genetic sequence. What they found was both hopeful and terrifying. The specimens are more complex than we realized, Volkov explained during an emergency briefing. They're not just pre-programmed machines. They're adaptive, intelligent. The Soviet specimen has been awake for 3 weeks, and in that time, it's learned. Modified its own cellular structure in response to containment. It's been communicating with the other specimens through quantum entanglement, instantaneous transmission regardless of distance. What have they been communicating? Webb asked. Coordination signals. The specimens are organizing, planning. They know we're aware of them now, know we're trying to stop them, and they're accelerating their timeline. How long until full activation? I asked. Days, maybe less. All 17 specimens are heating up simultaneously. They're reaching the thaw threshold together, coordinating their emergence. Can you create the shutdown code? Webb demanded. Volkov pulled up complex genetic sequences on multiple screens. Yes. With the Soviet data, I can complete it. But deploying it is another problem. We'd need to introduce the code directly into at least one specimen. It would spread through the network via their quantum communication. But getting close enough to do that. The specimens won't allow it, I said. They're intelligent. They'll resist any attempt to shut them down. Then we force it, Webb said. Surgical strike. Get into the containment chamber, inject the shutdown code directly into the specimen's central nervous system. That would require breaching containment, Volkov said, exposing whoever does it to direct contact with the specimen. And based on what happened to the Soviet research team, direct contact leads to transformation. How fast? I asked. Minutes. Once exposed to the specimen's biochemical field, cellular restructuring begins immediately. Then whoever does it, Webb said, won't make it out alive. We sat in silence, understanding what that meant. This was a suicide mission. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to save humanity. Over the next 48 hours, Dr. Volkov completed the shutdown code, a precisely engineered genetic sequence that would trigger a cascade failure in the specimen's cellular structure. Shut down their bioelectrical systems, deactivate their quantum communication network, essentially turn them off permanently. It's ready, she announced, but we have a window of only 6 hours. The specimens are reaching final activation. Soon, they'll be too active to accept the code. Their immune systems will reject it as a foreign agent. Then we do it now, Webb said. He looked at me. Carson, you've seen one of these things conscious. You've been closer to them than anyone else here. You understand what we're dealing with. You're asking me to volunteer, I said. I'm telling you that you're the best qualified. You're trained for field operations. You've proven you can handle extreme pressure. And you've seen firsthand what we're up against. I looked at the specimen in its containment chamber. It was moving more now, restless, testing its bonds. Its eyes, those alien, glowing eyes, seemed to look back at me with understanding. It knew what we were planning, and it was waiting. What happens after I inject the code? I asked. Cellular transformation will begin immediately, Volkov said. Within 2 minutes, your biology will start converting to match theirs. Within 5 minutes, you'll lose consciousness. Within 10 minutes, the transformation will be complete. And then you're part of the specimen, part of the network. But the shutdown code will already be spreading. It should deactivate all 17 specimens within hours. Should, I repeated. The theory is sound, the testing is conclusive. But we've never tried it on a living, active specimen. There are variables. Variables, I said. Great. Webb put a hand on my shoulder. No one's forcing you, Carson. If you decline, we'll find another volunteer. But time is running out. We need to make a decision. I thought about Earth. About 7 billion people who had no idea their planet was about to be transformed into something uninhabitable. About the future that would be stolen if we failed. I'll do it, I said. The procedure was scheduled for midnight. Gave me a few hours to prepare, to write final messages to family, to make peace with what was about to happen. Dr. Volkov found me in my quarters an hour before the operation. I wanted to say thank you, she said, for everything, for trusting me when I defected, for believing what I told you about the specimens, for risking your life in Siberia. You did the same, I said. Left everything you knew to warn us. I did what was necessary, as are you. She paused. Carson, there's something I didn't tell Colonel Webb. Something about the transformation process. What? The Soviet researchers who were transformed. They weren't just absorbed into the specimen. They retained fragments of consciousness, awareness. They were still themselves in some way, but also part of the collective, connected to something vast and ancient. You're telling me I won't really die. I'll just become part of an alien network. I don't know if that's better or worse, she said quietly, but I wanted you to know. What you're about to experience. It may not be the end. It may be something else entirely. At midnight, I entered the containment chamber wearing a full hazmat suit. Not for protection, since protection was impossible, but to delay exposure long enough to complete the injection. The specimen watched me enter. It had grown larger in the past week, more active. The containment liquid had been drained, and it now stood upright, supported by restraints that looked inadequate for something so powerful. I approached with the injection device, a specialized syringe containing the shutdown code, designed to penetrate deep into the specimen's central nervous system. The specimen didn't struggle, didn't resist. It simply watched with those luminescent eyes as I positioned the injector against what Volkov had identified as the primary neural cluster. I pressed the trigger. The syringe hissed, delivering its payload directly into the specimen's biology. And then everything changed. The specimen released a pulse, not physical, but biochemical, a wave of molecular signals that passed through my hazmat suit like it wasn't there. I felt it enter my lungs, felt it penetrate my skin, felt it reach my bloodstream. Transformation began immediately. My cells started restructuring. I could feel it. Tissue converting, DNA rewriting itself, biological systems shutting down and being replaced by something else. Something alien, pain, incredible pain, every cell in my body burning as it changed, but also awareness, growing awareness. I was connecting to something. The specimen, yes, but beyond it. The network. All 17 specimens, all waking simultaneously, all linking into a single consciousness that was vast and ancient and utterly inhuman. I saw through their eyes, felt what they felt, understood for just a moment what they were. They weren't invaders, they weren't conquerors. They were gardeners, terraformers sent by something incomprehensibly old to prepare worlds for habitation. They'd been doing it for millions of years, across countless planets. Earth was just one more garden to tend, and they didn't understand why we would resist. To them, transformation wasn't destruction. It was improvement, evolution. They were offering us a gift, the chance to become part of something greater. But we didn't want their gift. We wanted to stay human, stay ourselves, even if it meant staying mortal, staying limited, staying confined to our single planet. And so I pushed the shutdown code through the network. Felt it spread, specimen to specimen, a cascade of cellular failure propagating faster than they could adapt. They tried to resist, tried to filter it out, to isolate the infected nodes, but it was too late. The code was embedded in their core systems now, rewriting the very programming that made them function. One by one, the specimens shut down, went dormant, became nothing more than frozen biological artifacts again. The network collapsed. The vast consciousness I'd touched for one brief moment disappeared, leaving me alone in my fragmenting human awareness. And then, I felt nothing at all. I woke up 6 days later in a containment unit. Not the specimen's chamber, a separate facility, medical equipment surrounding me, monitors tracking vital signs that didn't make sense. Dr. Volkov was there. Colonel Webb. And my reflection in the polished steel wall showed me what I'd become. Still human in shape, still recognizably David Carson. But changed. My skin had a faint, translucent quality. My eyes reflected light differently. And when I focused, I could sense things I shouldn't be able to sense. Electromagnetic fields, quantum fluctuations, the biological signatures of everyone in the room. The shutdown code worked, Volkov said. Her voice was careful, measured. All 17 specimens are dormant. The network is offline. The terraforming process has been prevented. But I'm still transformed, I said. My voice sounded different too, layered, like multiple frequencies speaking at once. Partially. You were exposed to the specimen's biochemical field for 7 minutes before the shutdown completed. That was enough for significant cellular restructuring, but not enough for complete transformation. You're hybrid, part human, part specimen. Can it be reversed? I asked. She looked away. We don't know. Your cellular structure has stabilized at this intermediate state. Further transformation has stopped, but reversing it, we have no idea how. Colonel Webb cleared his throat. Carson, what you did saved the planet, saved humanity. You're a hero, but you're also a security risk. You have specimen DNA, specimen capabilities we don't fully understand. We can't let you leave this facility. I'm a prisoner, I said. You're under protective custody, for your safety and everyone else's. We need to study what's happened to you, understand your new biology, and we need to make sure the transformation is truly stable. How long? Webb's silence told me everything. I wasn't leaving, ever. I'd traded my life to save the world, but I'd also traded my humanity. I was something new now, something neither fully human nor fully alien, and the government couldn't risk letting me out. They kept me in the containment unit for 6 months, ran tests, monitored my biology, studied how the partial transformation had affected me. What they learned was both fascinating and disturbing. I healed faster than any human. Cuts closed in hours, broken bones in days. My cognitive abilities had expanded. I could process information faster, remember more clearly, understand complex systems intuitively, and I could sense the specimens. Even dormant, even shut down, I could feel them out there. All 17 sites spread across the Arctic. You're still connected to them, Dr. Volkov explained. The network link wasn't completely severed. A small part of you is still part of their collective consciousness. What does that mean? I asked. It means you're a bridge. Between human and specimen, between our world and whatever alien civilization created them. And it means you'll always know if they start waking up again. Will they? I asked. Wake up again? She hesitated. The shutdown code is permanent for these 17 specimens. Their cellular systems won't reactivate, but there may be others. Buried deeper, in locations we haven't discovered, and if the Arctic continues warming. They'll thaw naturally, I finished. New specimens, with no shutdown code in their systems. Exactly. Which is why we're maintaining the Alaska facility. Maintaining monitoring of all Arctic permafrost areas. Because this may not be over. The threat may just be delayed. In June 1989, they moved me to a different facility. Not a containment unit anymore, but not freedom either. A special research station built specifically for me, where I could live with some degree of normalcy while still being studied and monitored. The Cold War ended that year. The Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union began its collapse, and with it, cooperation became possible that had been unthinkable during the height of tensions. The US and Soviet Union, soon to be Russia, shared their specimen research, combined their data, their findings, their understanding. Together, we began a new program, global monitoring of Arctic permafrost, looking for other specimens that might exist. And we found them. 23 additional sites over the next decade, not all containing specimens. Some were empty voids where specimens had been but were gone. Others held specimens too degraded to pose a threat, but 7 sites contained intact, viable specimens that would wake if the permafrost thawed. We couldn't use the shutdown code on them. It only spread through an active network, and these specimens were isolated, dormant. We'd have to wait until they started waking before we could shut them down, which meant we had to prevent the thaw, keep the permafrost frozen long enough to develop new methods of neutralization. But the planet kept warming. Every year, the Arctic ice retreated. Every summer, the permafrost thawed a little more. We were in a race against climate change, and we were losing. I spent 36 years in that research facility. 36 years watching the Arctic warm, watching the permafrost retreat, knowing what was buried beneath the ice, waiting to wake. They released me in 2024. Not because the threat was over, but because I was getting old. I'm 72 now, and they determined I was no longer a security risk. The transformation stabilized decades ago. I'm still partially alien, still connected to the dormant specimens, but I'm no longer changing. And I wanted to tell this story before I die, before the information is buried in classified files forever. Because the Arctic is thawing faster than ever. The 7 additional specimens we found are in locations where permafrost is actively retreating. Within 10 to 15 years, they'll be exposed. They'll start warming, they'll wake, and we still don't have a way to stop them without someone sacrificing themselves the way I did. Last year, I went back to Alaska. The facility where I'd been stationed still exists, still monitors the specimen we shut down in 1988. It's melting out of its burial site. The permafrost that sealed it for 35,000 years is gone. In another 5 years, it'll be fully exposed. Dr. Volkov died in 2019. Colonel Webb in 2015. Most of the original team is gone now. The knowledge of what really happened, what these specimens are, and what they represent, exists only in classified documents that fewer and fewer people have clearance to access. The new generation of researchers at the facility are brilliant, dedicated, but they're studying the specimens as scientific curiosities, biological anomalies. They don't understand the scope of the threat, don't realize that climate change isn't just an environmental crisis. It's a timer counting down to a terraforming event that will end human civilization. I tried to tell them, showed them the classified reports, explained the network, the consciousness, the transformation. Some believed me. Most thought I was a traumatized old man clinging to Cold War paranoia. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am paranoid. Maybe the specimens are just biological artifacts with no remaining threat. But I can still sense them. All 24 sites. And I can feel them warming, slowly, steadily, year by year. Their cellular systems are dormant, but the thaw is inexorable. And when they reach the activation threshold, I've spent my retirement trying to raise awareness. Wrote reports for government agencies, testified before classified congressional committees, talked to anyone with clearance who would listen. The response has been minimal. Climate change mitigation efforts focus on sea level rise, extreme weather, agricultural disruption. All valid concerns. But nobody's talking about the alien terraforming machines buried in the Arctic permafrost. Because officially, they don't exist. The Alaska facility is still classified. The specimen program is still above top secret. And admitting that we're in a race to prevent Arctic thaw before ancient alien organisms wake up and transform our planet sounds like science fiction. But it's not fiction. I lived it. I became part of it. And I'm warning anyone who'll listen. The Arctic is melting, and what's buried there is waking up. 3 months ago, I got a call from the current facility director. Young guy, 40-something, career intelligence officer. He'd read the classified files, knew my history. Mr. Carson, we have a situation. One of the 7 additional specimens is showing signs of pre-activation. Temperature increase, bioelectrical activity, it's responding to the thaw. How long until full activation? I asked. 2 months, maybe 3. Have you prepared the shutdown code? We can't. This specimen isn't connected to the network we shut down in 1988. It's isolated. The code won't propagate to it. Then someone has to do what I did, I said. Direct injection during activation. Sacrifice themselves to shut it down. That's why I'm calling. We need someone who understands the transformation process. Someone who's already partially transformed who might survive the exposure better than a baseline human. Someone who knows what to expect. I understood what he was asking. You want me to go back, to do it again. You're the only person alive who's been through it, who knows what it feels like, what happens, how to resist long enough to deliver the code. If anyone can survive it, it's you. I'm 72 years old. My hybrid biology means I've aged slower than normal humans, but I'm still old, still tired. I've already given 36 years of my life to this threat, but I also know he's right. I'm the only one who might survive another exposure, the only one who's already connected to the specimen consciousness and might be able to resist it. When do you need me? I asked. 2 weeks. We need to prepare the shutdown code for this specific specimen's genetic sequence, and we need to brief you on the facility location and procedures. Where is it? Northern Alaska. 300 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The permafrost there is collapsing. The specimen is buried at the edge of a thermokarst lake that's expanding every summer. By our calculations, it'll be fully thawed in 60 days. 60 days until an ancient alien organism wakes up and begins transforming Earth. 60 days to prevent a catastrophe that most people don't even know is possible. I'll be there, I said. I'm writing this in a hotel room in Fairbanks. Tomorrow, I helicopter out to the specimen site. In 2 weeks, I undergo my second transformation, and this time, I don't think I'll survive. The first transformation was partial because the shutdown code activated quickly. This time, it'll take longer. The specimen is isolated. The code has to be customized. The whole process is more complex. I'll be exposed to the full transformation sequence, which means I'll become what those Soviet researchers became in 1972, fully transformed, fully integrated into the specimen network. No longer human except in memory. But if it prevents the awakening, if it keeps this specimen dormant for another few decades, it's worth it. Because there are 6 more out there. 6 more specimens in various stages of thaw, and each one will need someone to do what I'm about to do. Someone to sacrifice their humanity to save everyone else's. We need a permanent solution. We need to develop technology that can neutralize these specimens without direct contact. We need to admit they exist so the scientific community can help solve the problem. But until that happens, we have this. Individual sacrifices, classified operations, secrets buried as deep as the specimens themselves. I don't know if this document will ever be released. The CIA will probably classify it, bury it in some archive where nobody will read it for 100 years. But I had to write it. Had to leave a record of what really happened in Alaska in 1988. What I became. What I'm about to become. If you're reading this, if somehow this information has been declassified and released, then you need to know. The Arctic is still thawing. The specimens are still there, and the threat hasn't ended. We bought time. Maybe 50 years, maybe 100. But unless we stop climate change, unless we reverse the Arctic warming, the specimens will eventually wake. All of them. And when they do, the terraforming process will begin. Humanity will have 2 choices: adapt to the transformation and become something new, or fight it and face extinction. I don't know which choice we'll make, but I hope we'll have the wisdom to understand what we're really facing before it's too late. The specimens aren't evil. They're not invaders or conquerors. They're tools. Biological machines created by something ancient and vast to prepare worlds for habitation. We don't know what created them. We don't know where they came from or what civilization seeded them across the galaxy. But we know they've been doing this for millions of years. Earth isn't special. We're just one more world in a process that's been repeated countless times. But Earth is our home, our only home, and we have the right to defend it, to stay human, to remain ourselves even if it means missing the chance to become part of something greater. That's what I fought for in 1988. That's what I'm about to fight for again. The right for humanity to choose its own fate, to evolve on its own terms, to remain the masters of our own planet, even if it costs us everything. Tomorrow, I return to the Arctic, to a specimen site where something 40,000 years old is waking from a sleep that should have lasted forever. And I'll do what I did 36 years ago. Inject the shutdown code, undergo the transformation, become something neither human nor alien, but something in between. And I'll do it knowing that in 10 years, or 20 years, or 50 years, someone else will have to do the same thing. Because the specimens keep thawing, keep waking, keep trying to do what they were programmed to do millennia ago. We can delay them. We can shut them down one at a time. But we can't stop the Arctic from warming. We can't reverse decades of climate change overnight. The race is already lost. We're just fighting for time. But sometimes, time is all we need. Time to develop better technology. Time to find permanent solutions. Time to prepare humanity for what's coming. And if my sacrifice buys us that time, then it's a sacrifice worth making. This is my final message. My final warning. My final testament to what happened in the frozen north in 1988 and what's still happening now. The specimens are real. The threat is real. And the clock is running out. If anyone with authority reads this, if anyone with resources sees these words, don't let my sacrifice be in vain. Keep monitoring the Arctic. Keep developing neutralization methods. Keep fighting to prevent the awakening. Because if we fail, if the specimens fully activate, if the terraforming process begins, humanity's time on Earth ends. Not with nuclear war, not with pandemics, not with environmental collapse, but with transformation, with our planet becoming something alien, with us becoming something other than human, and maybe that's our destiny. Maybe that's what evolution looks like on a cosmic scale. But I'd rather we made that choice deliberately, consciously, than have it forced upon us by machines that don't understand why we'd resist. Stay vigilant, watch the Arctic. And remember, what's buried in the ice isn't dead, it's just sleeping, waiting for the world to warm enough to wake it. And that world is coming faster than anyone wants to admit. My name is David Carson. I was a CIA operations officer stationed at a classified facility in Alaska. I became something more than human to save humanity. And I'm about to do it again. This is my story. This is my warning. This is my gift to a world that doesn't know how close it came to ending. Use it wisely.